Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour, where today we are talking UFC 301. We've got Pantoja versus Erceg. We're going to be breaking down 4 fights here on the card. And as you can see, I've got 2 fantastic guests here today to help me break this down. And first one here, friend of the show, Miranda Maverick, number 15 flyweight in the world. Miranda, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, and then we also have Liam from Liam Picks Fights, a great mind when it comes to breaking down fights. Liam, thanks for also coming on today, and we're going to see if we can make some money here, man.
Always a pleasure, my man. And yeah, coming off a losing week last week, but doing well on the year so far and hoping to keep the ball rolling this weekend at UFC 301. As you know, I like to stop Brazilian hate on my show, so a lot of great opportunities this weekend. Let's see if we can figure it out.
Nice. All right, so we will jump right in to the main event of the evening. Now, we've got current champion Alexandre Pantoja. He's minus 195. On the comeback here, we've got Steve Erceg plus 155. This line has moved. Pantoja was a bigger favorite, and we're now talking around the minus 250. It's come in a little bit here. So when you're looking at this, you got Pantoja, current champion, gonna be aggressive, high-level BJJ, will move forward. You got Erceg on the other side, a well-rounded guy, fights very well behind his jab, his quick, snappy boxing, and he definitely, could be interesting to see kind of how it pans out when he's getting crashed into the pocket, where Pantoja will look to move forward. So, Miranda, ladies first here. How do you see this one playing out, and how do you think this one goes down?
I see Pantoja as retaining the title. I think that although Erceg is well-rounded, I think Pantoja is even better well-rounded. He has the better wrestling, in my opinion, and I think he can take it to the ground if he feels like he's in danger on the feet. I know Erceg has that knockout power and has a lot of tight striking, but Erceg also has the downside of playing it safe a lot of times. I think in a lot of his fights, he kind of plays on the safer side, where Pantoja gets in the middle and he'll just crack with somebody and hardly ever backs down. But I also think that could be a weakness for him with Erceg's power, trying to run in and just do the striking. But at the end of the day, I think Pantoja is going to have the better well-roundedness, be able to take him to the ground if he wants, and also have just the harder, more aggressive push throughout the fight and be able to control the pace.
Liam, how do you think this one's going to be going down here?
This is a tricky fight for me, and I'll level with you. I look at Pantoja as a guy that I've had a hard time getting right throughout his UFC run. I did bet on him the first time he fought Brandon Royval. I was proud of that bet. He went out there and smoked him. It was a pretty easy fight. But then you look back, and he kind of looked like he was slowing down towards the end of that fight. He did get the submission, but it looked like he had spent a lot of the gas that he had going for the submission at that point. So it's like he got the finish, looked great, but if that fight had got extended, how would it have looked? So I actually bet Royval in the rematch, lost some coins there. And when you're looking, that was a similar price tag, right? Same thing with Alex Perez, a guy that we just saw a fantastic win over the weekend. He was about a plus 165, plus 170 price tag against Pantoja. Pantoja's delivered in this price range a number of times. And so that makes it difficult for me to keep going back to the well. Like, let me find out again. And this guy just keeps taking my money. But on the other side of things, somebody had asked me early on in the cycle, what do you expect this betting line to be? And I kind of thought we'd see Erceg open up a plus 300, something like that. Reason being, he's not a very known commodity, right? He's only had 3 fights with the promotion. Pantoja's been here a lifetime. And, to see the line open up at, plus 250 and then to come down to a plus 165, sharps bet early and late, right? I have a feeling a lot of Pantoja money is going to come in throughout the course of the week, especially after weigh-ins, because he's a champion, because he's in Brazil, because there's going to be a lot of local support. But for me, it was an indicator that sharp early money was on the Erceg side here. I do think it's going to be a competitive fight. I think both guys can win it. But when you look at Pantoja, he takes a lot of risk, to Miranda's point. And I think that that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for craziness here. It's a flyweight division. We see these guys go out there, drop each other multiple times in title fights, get back up, keep throwing. A lot of craziness happens. And so for me, betting on somebody who's 65%, it's a tough sell for me. But I don't want to bet on Erceg at this plus 165 number. I want to wait, hope that the money comes in on Pantoja. If I can get over 2-1, it's probably going to be a dog shot for me on the Erceg side here because of that well-rounded nature of his skill set. I don't think he's like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, going to go out there and knock out every opponent. But I do think he's not going to give up easy positions. I think he's going to scramble. I think he's going to move. And if he can avoid giving up the back or getting knocked out, I think he can win the fight. I think he throws more volume, and I think he's got good enough cardio to compete. So hell of a fight. I like the matchmaking, even with a guy with a little bit of shorter experience. I think Erceg's ready to compete.
Yeah, for me, I mean, definitely I agree with both of you. The one thing for me, at least, is I just think there's a lot of advantages for Pantoja. And I think the physicality, I think the durability, and I think one of the biggest things, and you kind of touched on it there, was the experience. You know, it is massive when you're looking at who Pantoja has beat, the high level contenders, title challengers, former champions. And then you look at who really, and this may be one of the lower level rises to a title shot that maybe we have seen. I mean, not to be rude about it, but 3 fights in the UFC. I mean, he ended up knocking, who was it? It was Dvorak. He beat Dvorak, who was 0-3 in the UFC run. Then he beat Alejandro Costa, who was coming in on short notice, who I think is a good fighter, but just very short notice, and it was competitive. This is a guy that's opening this card, and he had a competitive fight with the guy that's headlining this card. So interesting enough there. And then he knocks out Matt Schnell, who, no offense to Matt Schnell, but he does not have the chin that he has. He can go down, out of his 8 losses, 7 are inside the distance. So when he loses, it's normally by brutal fashion here. But to even take it further back, I mean, the guys that just a year ago or a year and a half ago that Erceg was facing were the guy, right? The other one just for UFC is 4-4 right now. 4-4. The next one was 9-8. The next one's 6-1, and then it's 13-9. I mean, records don't say everything, but it also is just the level. I think Pantoja is just on another level here. I think this is an easy spot for him. I think this is a smash possible spot for him where he could look really, really impressive. Now we're shipping Erceg to Brazil. Tough spot for him here. So I do like Pantoja. I think he gets it done inside the distance. I think he can really put it on him. That head is always on the center line for Erceg as well. So I do like Pantoja here to get the job done inside the distance. So anything to add to that, or we're going to go on to the next one here?
I think whoever wins, it's likely to be inside the distance. That's all I was going to contribute there, because I think Pantoja in front of his home crowd is going to want to stand in the pocket and throw. He's going to want to try and put this guy away. And, that opens up opportunities, but it also is his path to looking really impressive, getting the finish. So that's what I'm expecting to see.
I agree. Inside the distance at some point, but I'm going with Pantoja.
All right. I like it. I like it. All right. So the next one here we are going to talk about is going to be Jonathan Martinez minus 165 against Jose Aldo, the return of the King of Rio, plus 135. Now, this one here, this was another spot where we saw about 2 days ago, this line was about even, about a pick 'em. Money consistently, I have not looked very recent, but it consistently has come in on Martinez. Consistent money has come in on him here. And he's 10-3 in the UFC, has looked absolutely fantastic, has looked really good. He has brought that leg kicking ability, really something that Aldo slightly got away from kind of at the end of his career. But you can kind of tell me here, I mean, the thing that issue for me, 2-year layoff, that's one thing. He's been boxing. That's, Aldo, that's another thing. Is he committed to this? Is this a spot where he's just, hey, it's in Brazil. This is, homeland for me. Let me jump on this. This is a big spot. I might as well come in. He's taking a very, very tough spot here. But Liam, we'll start with you here, man. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I'll acknowledge my biases up front. I'm a Jose Aldo fan, right? The rise of Conor McGregor, I think people forget how special it was because Jose Aldo was so special. And that's the part of the story that gets forgotten. And then you go look at how he's done going down another weight class where a lot of people didn't think that was possible. And then the run that he had, losing to Petr Yan, of course, a great champion. But other than that, he basically had a lot of success in the division. The fights that he lost against Marlon Moraes, a lot of people thought that he deserved the decision there. That's why he got the title shot in the first place. So I think of Jose Aldo as a guy who's kind of timeless. He goes out there and you know what to expect from him. He's very competent in all positions. He has very few submissions in the UFC, but when it comes down to it and he needs it, the grappling's in his back pocket. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we saw that against Marlon Chito Vera, right? A guy who just fought for the title. How did Jose Aldo win that fight when it got dicey in the third round? He said, you know what, come here, young man. And he put him in a body triangle. He held on, and Chito Vera was sitting there like, damn, this sucks. And he had nothing he could do about it. So for me, Jose Aldo has this wide variety of skills, and we always talk about the things like the leg kicks going away. I think that's because he started working with the Brazilian boxing team, but I don't think we saw him stop checking leg kicks. Right now that he's gone to a couple of boxing matches, maybe he forgets some of the fundamentals. But I think if he's coming back to a UFC fight, especially, you know, if I'm signing to fight Jonathan Martinez, I watch one fight of his, I'm like, okay, this guy's going to try and kick my leg off from bell, one till the end. So if that's the case, I think he's going to work on his checks. I think he's going to be prepared to counter with his combinations to the head and the body. I think that's a really difficult guy to fight when you're a guy like Martinez who wants to engage at kicking range. I think Jose Aldo's kind of seen everything from there. So could he get knocked out? Absolutely. He's 37 years of age. He's in a division that's really competitive. Martinez, quiet killer. He's been on a great run. But when you look at the quality of competition he's been facing, I think he's been beating good, solid guys. And I think Jose Aldo has only lost to champions and world-class contenders. For me, that's a little bit of a step above where Jonathan's been competing at. So, yeah, maybe the age and the ring rust and those things are what matters here. But when you're getting the plus money side on the guy who I think is objectively the better fighter, I'm going to pick Jose Aldo to get the job done here. They call him the King of Rio for a reason. I think he's going to be jumping the crowd. I think he's going to be doing the dance. I think he's going to be celebrating one more time and riding off into the sunset. I do think this will probably be his last UFC fight, but I think Davey Grant walked so Jose Aldo can run, baby. Give me Jose Aldo, and I think he's going to finish this fight.
All right, Miranda, what do you think?
And I'm going to disagree on that one. I think I'm going to go with Jonathan Martinez. However, I am not as skilled with your analysis. There is a lot of ring rust there. I've trained with plenty of people who take 2 years off. And when you're at that age, taking 2 years off, and like you said, having other opportunities in boxing and maybe even bare knuckle in his future, like he has a lot of other opportunities that he can do. I don't think that this would be a fully committed like fight camp for this. It's hard to go from one style to another, come back to it, even at top levels. And 2 years later, 35 to 37, that's a big difference in age. That's a big difference in weight cut and cardio. And I just don't know if it's going to measure up to an upcoming star, basically, that is younger, that is hungry to get up in those rankings to fight Jose Aldo, So I'm going to go with Martinez and say that just the youth there and the hunger to beat somebody who probably is an inspiration to him, who's been an inspiration the whole now becomes a rival. I know I can say that from being the young person who came up, like getting to fight the people that you watch growing up is just on another level of motivation, but also to where you're like, I've watched everything they've ever done. Like, this is who I learned from. And I don't know if that's exactly the case here, but I'm going to go with Martinez and say that just that age and that ring rust is really going to affect Aldo's performance. I do think that he's going to end up retiring in front of his home crowd regardless, but we'll see.
All right, I'm going to have to agree with Miranda here. I do like Martinez here, and I think that I do agree with this movement. I do agree. There's just so many variables here. Now, Liam, you got Jose Aldo at plus money. That's never going to be a bad bet. Flat out, you've got him there. But it's just the time off, and to your point, Miranda, the 2 year layoff. You're talking about other opportunities, boxing. Again, he's done MMA his entire life. It doesn't just go away. But just with the timing, the skill set, the work in the gym, is he doing those things where, Martinez is 100% all in. He has looked great. He consistently gets better. The one spot where I do think this is going to go is I do think this is going to be Martinez via decision. I think that this is a spot we can get off that number. And I think Aldo is going to do enough where it's going to be competitive. I do think there's going to be competitive moments. I think this is going to be one of those ones where it's going to be 1-1 going to the third. And then it's going to be, hey, this is going to be a tough fight here. Which angle is it going to be going? Where is it going to be tilting? And that's where I do think that Martinez can kind of have that steam at the end to be able to go out there, land the leg kicks, land the big shots. He's got great level changing kicks the body, the leg, mixes it up very well. I do think that's going to be that mixing in with the youth is going to get it done. So I do like Martinez here. The via points is around plus 155, plus 160 right now. I think that's a pretty good spot. So I'm going to be jumping on that for the co-main event. So with that being said, we're going to jump to the next fight on the card, and that is going to be Joe Anderson Brito minus 175 against Jack Shore plus 140. Now, this is going to be an interesting one here. We've seen a little bit of line movement going back and forth. You've got the big explosive Brito, who's got big power, can move forward, has shown a lot of explosiveness. And then the other side, you've got Jack Shore, great grappler, and he has that finishing ability. But This is now his second time moving to the flyweight division. It's going to be interesting how he has looked. Looked great against Makwan Amirkhani, but had some suspect moments in that first round. So how do you see this one going down here, Liam? And how do you think this one finishes up?
Yeah,
I would say I'm not going to bow in on this one because I don't know much about it. So you go.
Fair.
Sounds like a plan. And, I did think that Miranda made a great point on the last fight about them being very similar fighters, right? Like Aldo and Martinez are kind of like archetypes of one another, but one is younger. I just think the boxing is maybe the only difference in between there. And that's what Martinez has been trying to put the pieces together on in between fights. But as we talk about this one, man, Joanderson Brito's my guy. Another one. I got to disclose some biases. This guy made me so much money when he was a plus 250 underdog against Andre Fili. I had many units on it. I had him inside the distance 10-1. A price you'll never see again in the UFC for as long as this guy fights. He's so dangerous in every position, right? On the feet, he can knock you out. On the ground, you say, get up and do something, boy. He can put you in a choke 10 seconds later. He's a very dangerous guy. So for me, I think the problem with Jack Shore ultimately is the physicality. I think he's an extremely skilled fighter, but I think he will struggle with the physicality of Brito. Against Makwan Amirkhani, for one round, he struggled with the physicality. And then Makwan pulled a predictable Makwan. He had a little bit of cigarette cardio. We love the guy, but he just tends to fall off in round number 2 each and every time. And I think that Makwan had won unanimously round 1 on all 3 judges' scorecards. So Jack Shore is actually 8-0 as a professional at featherweight, but there's a reason he went down to bantamweight, to be bigger, to be stronger, to have an advantage over these guys. And now that he's back up competing against guys a similar size to him, I think the difference in physicality is going to be evident. You look at the weigh-in photos between these two guys, one guy looks like a guy who's like, training for a jiu-jitsu match on a local circuit. And one guy looks like just like a muscled out guy. And I think that, physique isn't everything, but I think Joanderson Brito, he's shown he's got the skills, right? He can put you in a ninja choke that puts you to sleep or makes you tap, within a couple of seconds, even talented grapplers, and then he can knock guys out on the feet. I think you look at the quality of resume, it's exceptionally better on the Brito side. Sneaky good wins. Chepe Mariscal on his resume pre-UFC. And then you look at the guys he's beaten. He can only beat who's in front of him, right? So the Weston Wilson win, you kind of take it for whatever it's worth. But some of these other wins, like, man, Jonathan Pierce is a guy that David Onama just struggled with, had a hard fight, got the win. Hats off to him. He was an underdog in that fight as well. So Pierce is well regarded in the community, beat C-Rod, the prospect killer, and all these guys. So now Brito gets no respect because he submitted him, like, instead of beating him by decision or something. So I get he was losing on the minutes, but he's a guy who can beat you from minute 1 to minute 15. And, I think his loss in the UFC, you run that one back, I think he would win it because I think he learned his lesson, which is don't try and grapple with this guy who's long and lanky and make myself tired. Go out there and land big shots at a distance and use my power and my physicality. So I like Joanderson Brito, and unfortunately for Jack, I think he's getting finished on Saturday.
Yeah, I definitely agree with basically everything you said there. I mean, I do agree with it. I think the physicality is going to be massive here. I don't think that Shore has the frame, and it's probably, to your point, like, it's probably why he went back down. He's probably like, hey, I'm not really kind of filling in the way I want to feel, or the feeling in the cage compared to them. I want that advantage. So I think that's kind of why I think he's going to struggle with the takedowns, as well as Brito's just a hard hitter, man. I mean, at this division, to be clean out, knocking guys out says a lot. I mean, it just really says a lot about his explosiveness, his power, and all of those things where I just think Shore is a little bit sloppy, I think, in certain spots. And again, the physicality, I think, is going to allow Brito to kind of get this to the feet. And I think standing is where a lot of this is going to be on the feet. And that just, to me, really allows Brito many opportunities to land the big shot, land the damaging shot, probably have the big moments in this fight throughout where you could see some pitter-patter shots from Jack Shore, and all of a sudden he lands one big shot, and that kind of nullifies pretty much a lot of the things that Jack Shore has done. And then more to your point of some of these people that Shore has beat. I mean, he's 6-1 in the UFC, but I think it's, if I'm mistaken, but I believe the only one that he beat is or that faced is Ricky Simone. I think the rest of them aren't even in the UFC anymore. I'm pretty sure Makwan and all those guys are no longer there. So even the fact that he's kind of moved up and has this pretty record, he hasn't faced the caliber of guys, again, to your point, that Brito has faced. So I do like Brito here. Minus 170. I don't think it's a bad parlay piece, but I do like him inside the distance. It's around plus 115, roughly around there, getting off the bigger number. I do like it. Think it's a good spot for him, and I do think this could end in brutality here for Jack Shore here on Saturday night. So anything to add, Liam, or you're good? Or Miranda. Wait, Miranda's got, hold on, time out.
Just a little bit to add. I did see the physicality difference when I looked them up. I've just never watched either of them fight. And I know for the women especially, we cannot pick fights based on physicality of the women, right? Just because we don't have knockout power most of the time anyway. So looking at, I think Hannah Goldie's a great example, right? Everybody looks at her and goes, oh yeah, win, like her versus Polyana Viana or Jinyu Frey against Polyana Viana, like those examples. And it's like, of course she's going to win. Look at those muscles. And it's like, that's not anything in the women's division. So for me, when I was looking, I was like, yeah, he looks big. He looks strong. He looks a lot better on the scale, like you guys mentioned. But I was like, that could mean nothing. I have no idea. So I just decided to kind of bow out of that one. But I'm glad to hear that the physicality kind of did matter in this one. And that explains why Jack Shore was kind of going up and down in the weight classes there.
Right. This isn't a vanity contest, right?
Yeah, and the one thing I wanted to do is give credit to Jack, because he does have good kicks. Like, he has good boxing. I just don't know that he could affect a guy like Brito. Like, Brito just seems durable and, like, willing to take this damage. And the Ricky Simone fight is a really concerning look for Jack, because Ricky's not known for being like a one-hitter quitter or a guy who's, like, knocking a lot of his opponents out. And then he was able to knock him out and then finish him on the ground. You know, it was like a formality at that point when he got to the head and arm choke. So for me, that's really dangerous against a guy like Brito, who is known for that and who is a known 145-pounder, you know, with a lot of proven results. He's even competed as high as 155, whereas Jack did the bulk of his good work in his career, you know, at the 135-pound class.
Yeah, good points. All right, so we're teetering on that one as well. And then the last one we're going to talk about here is going to be Vitor Petrino, a big favorite here against Anthony Smith. Now, this does feel a pretty hand-picked spot for Petrino to kind of continually move him up the ranks, which obviously is also okay. He's a young guy. What is he? He's 26 years old. I mean, he's got a lot of time to really develop. They don't have to rush him, those kinds of things. But, you know, Smith is up there. He is a known guy. This is a great name for him here. How do you see this one going down? Miranda, do you want to jump on this one? How do you feel this one going down? And how do you see this one finishing up?
Yeah, one, I don't see this division as very stacked. You know, obviously, as you get in these higher weight classes for the men, they're not as stacked up. Anthony Smith's been a name that's been around in that top 10 area for a very long time, right? And you've seen him lose pretty badly and win pretty well. But I feel like he's slowly gone down as far as his talent level, I guess you'd say, with age. And I'm not sure how old Anthony Smith is. Maybe you can give me that stat real quick. But 35. I know that Vitor's okay, 35. So he's not super old, but pretty old, especially for that weight class, the amount of damage that they take. And I feel like Vitor's a bunch of good wins. He's had a lot of great competition. Anthony Smith, of course, has faced some really good guys as well, but it seems like when he gets to kind of that top level of competition, he never really does too well. And I feel like this is just kind of Vitor's time to shine.
Liam?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking like who is going to have a better UFC career in the long term, the answer is probably Vitor Petrino, even though you know that Anthony's already made it to a title shot stuff. You just look at the talent on the guy and the fact that he's still green, he's still quite raw, and you say, man, this guy has a lot of upward potential. But the one thing I did is I did watch a lot of tape on this right before we got on the air, because I've been a Vitor Petrino guy. You know, he burnt me on Turkali. I had Turkali by sub because I was like, man, Turkali's clearly a better grappler. You just watch the two of them move and compete, and you're like, man, Turkali knows what he's doing. But then you see, if you guys have ever been to a grappling class, you know, you start moving around with somebody. It doesn't matter if you know more about grappling. If they're stronger, they're better, they're moving faster. You know, D1 wrestlers sometimes come in and they start beating up on people that are really good at jiu-jitsu just because they can control people. They know how to move around them. They're fast. They're in great shape. They're strong. They have the right attributes to succeed at grappling, which is just trying to control somebody, you know, and put them in positions they don't want to be in. And when I look at Vitor Petrino, he came into the UFC as like a striker, right? Like a guy who's like, no, I got big power in my hands. I can knock people out. And he's kind of turned into a grappler by default, you know, like that's the one danger for me. It's like this guy comes out there and he's trading hands with a lot of guys and starting to get wobbled a little bit and being like, yo, I don't need this in my life. Like, let me grab a hold of these guys. And he's so strong that he can do things wrong and still get on top. He can make a mistake, go to the ground, just stand back up, turn around, throw him. Like things that don't make sense and don't work for other people are going to work for this guy. He's built like that. Guys taking his back and then he just turns in repeatedly over and over, multiple times throughout the fight. So is Anthony Smith going to be technically better than him in every position? I actually think that that's true. If you just look at like who skills on paper, like Anthony, when he went out against Glover Teixeira for 4 minutes, he looked like he could have been a Muay Thai world champion. He's out there behind the guard, throwing kicks and whatever. And then he gassed out. So then he got beat up by a guy who's just like hitting him with basic punches from the turtle for 20 minutes and punching his teeth out. Anthony is kind of hit and miss. You never know what you're going to get from the guy. Against Ryan Spann, he came out like a house on fire. Looked great. He's beating him up, like punching him around, moving him around, cutting angles, looking good. And then he got hit with a big left hook, which is one of Petrino's favorite weapons. His eye got closed, and then he kind of shelled up the rest of the fight. It was unbelievable. They gave him that decision, but it's because Ryan Spann took no advantage of it, right? He would refuse to press that advantage the rest of the fight. So I think that Anthony has kind of had a very ugly recent set of fights, but I do think he's still motivated to get in there. I don't know why else you'd sign to fight Vitor Petrino, right? That just seems like a bad idea. Tyson Pedro just retired off this opportunity, right? But even still, I've been less impressed by Vitor than I expected to be in the rewatch, because on the night, it's like, man, this guy is just, it's going to be hard to beat him. You know that. But to go from, minus 200 or whatever range, which makes sense, to minus 500 and 600 against the better guys that he's fighting now. Because the other thing is, Anton Turkalj just went 0-4 in the UFC and got his walking papers. Thanks for playing. And that's no disrespect. That's just the way it went. Why did Vitor Petrino make him look like a great fighter? They had a war. They had a back and forth. It was a scrap. And the other thing is, I forgot about this entirely. Vitor Petrino got knocked out in that fight. He gets hit with an up kick and just drops into the guy's guard and like wakes back up and starts punching him again. The guy's tough and he's strong. But look at the Rodolfo Bellato fight on Contender Series. They set that up for Vitor Petrino to win. I hope I'm not breaking news. He had beat Bellato already. They fought already. They're like, running back again, maybe. And he almost got knocked out in that fight. So they want Vitor Petrino to be the next guy. Like they're building him accordingly. Yeah. Like you said, they're putting him in the right positions. But I don't think it's going to be this time. I think he's going to win this fight. I think he's got enough power, enough athleticism. I think he's catching Anthony enough on the decline here. But I do think the Vitor Petrino fade is coming, and I think it's going to be glorious. So if this line gets to like 5-6 to 1, I'll probably have to just hold my nose and bet Anthony Smith here. But the thing is, I just can't miss it when it comes, because Vitor is everything he's advertised as, a great athlete. But in terms of the fight skills and the concerns you had coming in, he is a stiff guy. He is a little awkward on the feet. He does keep his chin right on the center line, and he relies on being a huge bricked up athlete that can take these shots. But like eventually, especially in the weight class he's in, that does not work, So I think that that bill's going to come due, but I just don't know if Anthony Smith is that guy right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. When I first saw Petrino, go on, Miranda, go on.
Sorry. I was going to say, one, like I said, like there's always a different part of Anthony Smith that comes in. We see him great. We see him terrible, like I said. And it's like, it's always hit or miss what he's going to do. And Vitor, as a young fighter, that's the only thing really going for him in terms of, he does have a lot of time to still learn. He has a lot of time to improve between fights and get better. And I know that from being a young fighter, I try my best to look different every time I come into the cage, right? You don't have to be the same version of yourself, and you shouldn't be, especially in your 20s, moving on up. You should never look like the same fighter you were the last fight. And I do think Vitor has kind of shown evolution, especially in that grappling side of it, like you mentioned, but not as much evolution as you would hope to see in that weight class, right? To be the best in the world. But I do think he has a lot of potential going forward, and does need to keep improving. And then I also wanted to talk towards your grappling point, because you brought it up a couple different times about like the grappling levels, like, oh, they're a black belt, or, oh, they have a lot of good knowledge. And it's like you said, like that doesn't always matter at all. We always joke in the gym that once you get hit once or twice, you're not a you're a brown belt, and then you get hit a couple more times, now you're a purple belt. And I fought plenty of girls who can whoop me at grappling. Like we'll grapple and I'm like, dang, I gotta defend myself and push as hard as I can, and then we'll do an MMA round and I'm like, oh, you can't do anything now. And so it's a big difference there. And I do think Anthony Smith has better skill set, but I do think Vitor has much more athleticism now at this point in his life versus Smith. And I think that he'll be able to, purely out of physicality and athleticism, get out of any problems on the ground, at least with Anthony.
Yeah, Petrino was a guy when I first saw him, was a guy I was already looking to fade. It was a guy I thought he was a little clunky. He had power, he looked like this, statue, but did he really put it together? And then he slowly is, and maybe to your point, Miranda, maybe it's not to where he should be, but at least he just looked like a can crusher kind of guy. And now he's starting to wrestle. He's starting to change it up a little bit. He's being a little bit more patient, which I think is helping him also. He's not just, these guys aren't just dropping from one shot and they go down. And, now you got Smith, who, is he durable at this point? What's his chin like? His only 2 wins since, 2021 are Ryan Spann. Being the same guy, kind of crazy, but they set that up because he's a company guy. They, give him a little win there, make him feel warm and fuzzy. And it was a good spot for him that worked. But overall, you just see him coming off this knockout from Roundtree, which was an absolute brutal knockout. Where is he at this point? But I'm actually at the point where I think that this is going to be a spot where Petrino is not going to look for really takedowns. I think that if he does, it's just going to be kind of laying on top, keeping control. I don't think he wants to really mess too much with Smith, his ground game. And also, I do think that Smith is going to be probably very, very defensive. He's not going out there slinging leather in the middle of the ring. He's going to be looking to kind of pitter-patter shots, be defensive. I actually think this does go the distance, as much as I think a lot of people may think this is going to be, a one-kill shot for Petrino. But I think that he can be a little bit defensively sound. I think he can work on the outside a little bit. If he is taken down, I think that he can be knowledgeable enough to at least be safe, survive, make it through. So for me, I like Petrino via points, which is around plus 240, plus 250. I think it's a pretty good spot here. And I think it's a likely path because I just think that Smith can survive enough and kind of get through that. Liam, did you have something?
Yeah, Vitor is actually the only guy not to finish the pleasure man inside the octagon.
That was the other one, yes.
I think that, to your point, that is a good observation. And when you talk about what opens up a finish, it's all right, I could just get to this spot really easy. It's a great, opportunity. Do you really want to get on top of Anthony Smith? I think he could control him. But to your point, unless he's passing to the mount, I do think he could be in some danger. Anthony does throw up submissions off of his back. And Vitor hasn't shown some great sophistication on top. He normally just is on top, tries to keep the elbows and just throw a bunch of shots to the body. That's a fine way to operate, but it's not like he's out there, showing a sophisticated passing game. Most of the time when he's passing or anything like that, it's from hurting somebody, they fall to the ground, and then he starts to pass the guard. So I think that it wouldn't surprise me if even if Vitor gets on top, Smith is able to work back to his feet, but he just keeps turtle and he kind of shells up and doesn't want to take too much damage. Unfortunately, that's been the story of a lot of recent Anthony Smith fights.
Right. And it's even when he fought Johnny Walker a little bit, it was the same thing. Johnny Walker, explosive, heavy-handed, and they kind of just were statues kind of throwing pitter-patter shots back and forth. So I do think this one does get to – I actually don't even know the total on this one, but I do think it's one does go to the decision.
I'm not sure what the total is. I'll pull that up.
If you got it for a second before we
definitely getting plus money. Goes the distance is plus 200 on Bet Online. So yeah, 2-1 on the goes to decision, and I don't think it's a bad look. But I do think there is a world in which Anthony gets flatlined in the first round as well.
Right. One exchange and it's all over. Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate both of you coming on today, breaking this one down. We're going to see how we do. Feeling we got some good spots, good information as well, too. So I appreciate Miranda. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully we will see you in the cage soon, as well as Liam. Thanks for coming on. Always enjoy your knowledge and your deep analysis like myself. Sometimes I talk too much, so I don't even know when to stop. So it's good here. I got multiple guests. I can chop myself down a little bit here. But thanks for coming on. We will do this again soon. And good luck this weekend, everybody.